Welcome to AudioVerse Listening Library, where books don't just speak, they unfold. Before every success story you've ever heard, before every invention, every business empire, every personal transformation, there was something invisible at the beginning. Not money, not talent, not opportunity, but desire. A burning internal state that refuses to accept life as it is and insists on shaping life as it could be. In this chapter, Napoleon Hill calls desire the starting point of all achievement. Today, we'll go far beyond the book. We'll look at what modern psychology, neuroscience, and philosophy have discovered about desire, and whether it truly creates wealth, success, and change, or whether it can also destroy us. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin the journey. Chapter 1. In Think and Grow Rich, Hill tells us that desire is not a wish, not a hope, not a daydream, but a burning obsession so powerful that it becomes a mental command. He says that every person who has ever succeeded, in money or in any other field, first created that success in the mind, through a clearly defined desire held with emotional intensity. But what is this state really? And how do we turn desire into reality? That's what this chapter sets out to answer. Hill begins by saying that desire is the first step in the journey to wealth. Nothing begins until a person becomes emotionally charged with what he calls a definiteness of purpose. A vague want produces nothing. A burning desire creates movement. To prove this, he tells the story of Edwin C. Barnes, a man who did not wish to work with Thomas Edison, but was determined to become his business partner. Barnes had no money, no education, no reputation, nothing except desire. But that desire was so strong that he traveled across the country by freight train just to meet Edison in person. He wasn't hired immediately. He swept floors in the office for months. But his desire didn't fade, and eventually an opportunity appeared. Edison had created a new invention, the Edison dictating machine. No one believed it would sell, except Barnes. He seized the opportunity, sold the machine aggressively, and made millions. Hill says, this is how desire works. Not instantly, not comfortably, but with persistence, obsession, and readiness to act when the moment arrives. Then Hill gives the 6 steps for turning desire into wealth, a formula we'll break down scientifically in a moment. He ends the chapter with this message: every failure carries with it the seed of an equivalent success, if the desire is strong enough. But does science agree? Does desire really predict success? Is burning obsession healthy or dangerous? What about spiritual teachings that say desire is the root of suffering? That's where our deeper exploration begins. The science behind desire. Modern neuroscience confirms something Napoleon Hill understood intuitively. Desire is not just an emotion, it is a neurological force. The moment you strongly want something, the brain releases dopamine, the chemical that drives motivation. Dopamine is not released when you achieve something. It is released when you pursue something. Which means success is not driven by having. Success is driven by wanting. Let the idea sink in. A Harvard study on long-term achievers found the same pattern. The most successful people were not the most talented or the most intelligent. They were the ones whose desire remained active longest, even in the face of failure. Desire, effort, feedback, adaptation, mastery, result. Neuroscientists call this the reward prediction cycle. Hill called it burning obsession. The dopamine loop connection, still narration, but slight shift to conversational tone. When Hill says, you must become so obsessed with your goal that it dominates your mind, He is describing what modern psychology calls a dominant neural pathway, a pattern of thought the brain keeps returning to, building stronger and stronger connections through neuroplasticity. In other words, the more you think about a goal, the more the brain is wired to pursue it. Music fades slightly, slow, soft piano comes under. This is also why vague goals don't work. The brain needs clear direction, something specific to chase. I want money doesn't activate the system. I will earn $10,000 per month by doing X before June 2025. That lights up the motivational circuits. Contrast. When desire becomes dangerous. Philosophical contrast. But here's the truth Hill doesn't explore deeply. Desire can be both creative and destructive. In Buddhism, desire is seen as the root of suffering. In Stoic philosophy, unrestrained desire is a form of slavery. Why? Because when desire turns into attachment, the mind becomes restless, anxious, and never satisfied. So here is a modern balance Hill didn't teach. Healthy desire. Vision, purpose, plus discipline, plus flexibility. Unhealthy desire. Obsession, ego, entitlement, fear of losing. Hill told us, you must want it with all your being. Modern psychology adds, and you must still remain psychologically free if you don't get it yet. Scientific truth. Desire alone is not enough. Desire plus strategy plus feedback plus adaptation equals real achievement. Napoleon Hill was half right, but he was right about the first step. Nothing great is ever built without desire. Earlier, we summarized Hill's message. Desire must become a definite purpose. Hill then offers a 6-step method, a practical engine for turning wanting into getting. Now, we'll rewrite each step in plain modern terms. We'll look at the neuroscience that makes it work and where it can fail. And we'll meet 6 people whose lives show this method in action, the light side and the shadow side. Let's begin. Step 1. Decide clearly. Name the target. Modern rewrite. Choose one specific outcome, write it down, and set a deadline. Clarity is the brain's map. Neuroscience tells us that clarity focuses attention. The brain's reticular activating system, the gatekeeper of attention, primes you to notice opportunities that match your specific goal. Vague wishes scatter attention. Specific goals concentrate it. When you name a concrete outcome, you create a cognitive beacon the brain can follow, and the dopamine system starts rewarding small steps toward it. Case study: Oprah Winfrey. Imagine a young girl in rural Mississippi, 14, awkward, ashamed of poverty, but stubborn in a quiet way. Oprah walked into a classroom and decided, not casually, but as a decree to herself, "I will not live the life my parents live." She wrote. She practiced speaking. She took small steps that looked ugly at the start: public speaking, reporting, tiny TV gigs. Each specific success lit the next. Years later, when an offer arrived that would change everything, it matched the map she had quietly drawn for herself. It's the brain following a beacon you built when you named your goal. So, what exact outcome do you want in the next 12 months? Write it as a single sentence with a number and a date, not only in your journal, but also in comments to come back and tell everyone what have you achieved of it. Step 2. Commit emotionally. Make it personal. Modern rewrite. Attach personal meaning to the goal, so it shifts from intellectual to emotional. The difference between I'd like and I must. Emotions tag memories and priorities in the brain. When a goal is emotionally charged, the amygdala and the hippocampus strengthen the memory traces and link them to motivation. The brain begins treating pursuit as emotionally relevant. Dopamine spikes reward the pursuit, not the attainment. making the work itself compelling. Case study: J.K. Rowling. Picture a small flat in Edinburgh. Bills piled, a baby to care for, a notebook filled with the whispered world of a wizard. Rowling didn't pursue a book. She pursued the rescue of a story that had become a part of her life. The emotional attachment, the need to tell that story, turned late nights into fuel. Rejection letters were painful, but the inner charge didn't die. She didn't chase money. She pursued rescue of the story. That emotional tether is what kept her going when the world said no. So the next question for listeners is, why do you want this? Honestly, list 3 emotional reasons, not practical ones. Step 3. Program your day. Build habits around the goal. Convert intention into daily systems, tiny, consistent actions that wire your brain and produce compound results. Behavioral science shows that identity and habit formation beat willpower. Repetition creates neural pathways. The prefrontal cortex offloads tasks to automated routines. Implementation intentions: if X happens, I will do Y. Reduce friction and raise follow-through. In short, design environments that make the right action the easy action. Case study: Kobe Bryant. Kobe's legend is often reduced to talent. The real story is ritual. At dawn he trained, at dusk he trained more. He tracked small lifts, repetitions, missed shots, built systems to guarantee progress. When pain, doubt, or injury visited, the system kept him moving. Habit made the impossible inevitable. Desire lit the flame. Routine made it a furnace. Here comes your next alert. 1. What is one 10-minute ritual you can do every day that moves you toward the goal? 2. What friction currently prevents you from doing that ritual? How will you remove it? Here, dear listeners, we're moving to next step. Step number 4. Visualize plus rehearse. Mental practice with emotional intensity. Use vivid mental rehearsal to simulate success, priming the body and brain for real-world performance. Neuroscience finds that mental rehearsal activates many of the same neural circuits as actual performance. Athletes use visualization to rehearse muscle memory. Surgeons rehearse procedures mentally to reduce errors. Visualization, paired with emotion, increases neural fidelity. The brain treats the rehearsal as useful practice. Case study: Elon Musk. Musk didn't simply want rockets. He rehearsed outcomes in spreadsheets and designs in obsessive detail. He imagined failure modes and the precise steps that would be required to fix them. Even when he was broke and mocked, he had mentally walked the factory floor 1,000 times. That rehearsal shortened the learning curve. It prepared teams to act fast when the first rockets failed. 1. Spend 2 minutes imagining finishing your goal. So take your journal and answer the following questions. 1. What do you see? Name 3 sensory details. 2. What obstacle do you expect? Visualize overcoming it. What do you do? 3. Which micro skill will you mentally rehearse this week? Next is step number 5. Seek feedback and adjust rapidly. Create a tight feedback loop. Test, measure, learn, and adapt quickly. Failure is data, not finality. Modern learning theory and cognitive science show that feedback accelerates mastery. The brain updates internal models when prediction errors occur. Systems with fast feedback converge faster. That's why agile entrepreneurs and elite performers deliberately seek challenge and data to force learning. Case study: Serena Williams. Serena's practice wasn't passive repetition. It was targeted correction. Coaches, match footage, biomechanics, every error became a lesson. After losses, she and her team measured movement, adjusted angles, fixed tiny technical things, then returned stronger. This is desire plus curiosity, not rigid obsession, but disciplined adaptation. So, are you ready for checkup? Then let's find out answers to these upcoming questions. 1. What metric will tell you you're improving? Define one measurable feedback signal. 2. When you fail, what question will you ask? What does this tell me? Versus why me? 3. Who can give you honest feedback this month? Name them. So, here comes our last step. Step number 6. Persist relentlessly, but stay psychologically flexible. Keep going when it's hard, but adapt strategy. Persistence is direction plus learning, not blind endurance. Research on grit shows correlation with long-term achievement, but newer studies warn against mindless persistence when the strategy is broken. The most effective perseverers combine tenacity with metacognitive flexibility. They persist at the goal, but change the method when data shows it's needed. That balance protects against ruinous obsession. Case study: Steve Jobs. Jobs persisted through public humiliation and failure, famously ousted from Apple. But his persistence wasn't stubbornness for the sake of ego. It combined a relentless vision with ruthless product iteration. He returned to Apple with new methods and an altered strategy. The lesson? Persistence without reflection can become a trap. Persistence plus learning becomes a force. So last but not least, pause and think before moving forward that 1. How will you know when to pivot method but not abandon the goal? Name one decision rule. 2. What will you do this week to persist in a tiny, measurable way? 3. If you had to shorten the timeline by half, what would you stop doing? These 6 steps: clarity, emotional commitment, daily systems, vivid rehearsal, fast feedback, and adaptive persistence form a modern engine you can use today. Hill's original wisdom pointed toward many of these ideas. Neuroscience and modern psychology simply give us clearer mechanisms and guardrails. Desire lights the spark, but the steps turn heat into form. Close your eyes for 30 seconds. See your named outcome. Feel the emotion attached to it. Now open your eyes and write the following, without editing. 1. The single-sentence goal with a date. 2. One 10-minute daily habit you will practice starting tomorrow. 3. One person who will give you honest feedback this month. Keep this note. Use it as a map. Revisit it weekly. If desire is the spark and method is the furnace, then faith is the fuel that keeps the fire burning when the world looks dark. In Chapter 2, we'll explore faith, not as blind superstition, but as a cognitive and emotional amplifier that changes how you interpret information, how you commit to action, and how you persist in the face of long odds. Join me next time. We'll examine what faith does in the brain, where it helps, and where it can lead us astray. If this breakdown sparked something in you, take a moment to journal the questions before you move on. Transformation happens in the pause, not the scroll. When you're ready, join me in the next chapter, where we go deeper into the psychology, the science, and the unseen patterns behind success. Until then, keep thinking, keep growing, and remember, the mind you build builds the life you live.